Welcome back to County Connection. For this next segment, we're going to be talking about staying safe around our rivers and streams. And here to tell us all about it are John Reller and Aaron Sirac from the Summit County Sheriff's Office. Welcome, Aaron and John.
Hey, Julie, how are you?
Doing great, thanks.
Good.
All right. So we are, as we head into June, we expect that at some point we will reach runoff season, right? It'll stop snowing?
We hope so. It'd be nice to have a spring.
It would be. This time of year, what should people be thinking about in terms of the hazards related to swift water?
Several things are general awareness, the safety around the water. Kids and dogs, how close you are to the water, what the weather's doing that day.
Mm-hmm.
The warm days, obviously, we're going to get runoff, but also are we getting a thunderstorm that afternoon? And we've got a quick rise in water levels because of that. Is the temperature cooling off at night enough to slow it down?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things like that. This year, we might have an added hazard, I think we will have, of all the debris that potentially could be in the streams. If you look at all the avalanches that came down around the county, but in 10 Mile Canyon,
right,
the amount of trees that could potentially be getting washed down or causing jams and strainers in the water.
Absolutely. So a lot going on out there, a lot to think about. So to dive into some of these topics that you just touched on a little more deeply, so as far as snowpack goes, where are we this year relative to other years?
Compared to the last many years, we're way above where we were percentage-wise. And we really haven't had much runoff at all. Typically the past several years by now we've had a fair bit of runoff, and it really hasn't started much at all. In fact, it's still loading up there with the snow that we're getting.
Right. So we could see quite a bit of volume coming down, and then how quickly that comes down kind of depends on the weather.
Exactly. We'll certainly see a lot of volume. It's just a matter of how quickly it comes down or spread out over ideally several weeks with some more mild temperatures as opposed to a rapid warm-up.
Okay. So how specifically does the weather play into the equation, and what kinds of things should we be on the lookout for when it comes to big flows, fast flows, or things that might lead to flooding?
Obviously, the sun being out is the major one that everybody is aware of and thinks about. The temperature, it could be a sunny but cooler day, but what's the temperature doing? And then are we going to get a rain shower that afternoon? Did it cool off the night before to really slow that flow? Because one thing you want to watch for is the water level will rise in the streams and rivers later in the day and even after it's dark. Because it's melting up high, but it's going to take a little while before it comes down. So if you're camping or doing something along the stream, you want to be aware of that and make sure you've got plenty of safe room from where you're setting up or having a picnic or whatever the case may be.
Okay. So along those lines, what precautions should folks take if they are even if they're not recreating in the river specifically, but if they're just near the river, what precautions should folks take in order to ensure the safety of their kids and pets?
The number one thing is education. If you can get a good education as to water safety ahead of time, then you're going to avoid a lot of problems. Being smart around the water, like you say, with your pets and kids, everybody loves to throw sticks in the water and watch them go down.
Right.
Dogs love to chase that stick.
Right.
So be mindful of what's going on. Is your dog on a leash? Is another dog in the area that might chase something that you're throwing in? Keeping a safe distance from the edge of the water. Especially with higher water flows, you get erosion, and the banks might not be what they were last week when you were there. So you step a little bit too close and it's either wet or undercut, and you could be falling into the water before you realize it.
And then I would say every year around this time we advise people to have a heightened sense of caution and awareness around our waterways. And then this year particularly, given the amount of snowpack that we have. And then we've got these particular situations that you've mentioned, looking at 10 Mile Creek in particular. So both of the two of you scouted up there and had a close look at what's going on in 10 Mile Creek?
We've been up there. We've looked not real closely, but from the highway and a little bit up the bike path, and just the amount of logs, broken trees that's in there could really cause some problems. You know, definitely be a different water flow in spots than there has been in past years.
Right. So what does this mean for kayakers in particular, kayakers and boaters who do get out there and recreate in 10 Mile Canyon?
Again, be smart. Plan ahead. Go out and scout the river before you just get on. Like I say, it's going to be different from day to day as that stuff shifts. Logs come downstream and whatnot. And another precaution is the temperature of the water. It's all snow runoff. So even on the warmest of days, that water is going to be extremely cold. So being prepared for the water temperature, not the air temperature.
Right. And then how about as we move through town in Frisco, 10 Mile Creek meanders through town, and so folks who may not necessarily be serious rafters or kayakers, it may look a little more inviting than it actually is. So what should
Definitely
people be?
Look more inviting than it potentially is. You know, again, foot entrapment issues, you know, getting caught, whether it's in rocks or logs, and also coming through any of the towns, the bridges that are there as the water level rises. Is there enough clearance, or are you going to get stuck at or under that bridge? So really important to take a look at that stuff ahead of time.
Right. Go ahead, Erin.
And as inviting as it may look, don't be tempted to run to Walmart or Target and buy your inflatable raft and think you're going to just float down the creek. It's certainly not safe for those types of activities, especially not this year.
Right. Right. That is it may not look like a lot from the outside, but it is a serious waterway that demands respect, particularly this time of year. And so speaking of respect for waterways, the two of you have some equipment here that is mandatory if you're doing certain types of activities around the water. So can you take us on a tour of the gear that that people should be equipped with in order to be around our waterways and in them safely?
So I've got the absolute minimum on if we get a call for a swift water incident or anything around the water, and that's obviously a PFD, helmet, and then gloves.
And what does PFD stand for?
Personal flotation device.
Okay.
So having the correct type of flotation device and properly fitting for the activity that you're doing is very important. Again, can't just go buy an inexpensive one if you're going to be on a river and doing the activities that we're talking about.
Okay, so on the one end of the spectrum, we have Walmart raft. That's not that's not going to do the trick. And then here we have we're probably in the 75% of the way down the spectrum here. Erin, you've got on some additional pieces of gear here. Can you explain to us what else you have on?
I'm actually equipped with a full dry suit. John mentioned the water temperature. A dry suit, if you're going to be kayaking or rafting on the river this time of year especially, would be recommended. If you do end up in the water, it's going to keep you protected, going to keep you drier, going to give you that extra flotation, and give you a longer chance of participating in your own self-rescue before you become too cold to do so.
Great. And what else do we have here?
Throw bags are also something that we always have with us, whether we're just scouting the river or going out on a mission. That if somebody's in the water, this is the safest way for us to effect a rescue.
All right.
If somebody's conscious and they can grab onto a rope, we can throw it to them and swing them to shore. And then we don't have to put other people in the water and expose them to risks as well.
Right. And so if someone, let's say, is, well, we talked about the kind of deceptive nature of some of our waterways this time of year, and that, you know, maybe other times of year they pose much less of a risk. But one of the things that people should be aware of is how easy it is to get swept off your feet in swift water So can you talk a little bit about that?
Definitely. Just 6 inches of water can actually start to move a vehicle if it's moving fast enough. So while you might be able to walk out till knee deep, even mid thigh deep, if you lose your footing, you're probably not going to get it back, and you are going to be swept downstream.
And so, what are the some of the considerations, particularly for anglers who may be in our waterways? What kinds of equipment needs or safety precautions should they be thinking about?
Having some type of PFD is always a really good idea. Another one that I think is extremely important is having a belt around your waders, so that if you do lose your footing, they don't instantly fill with water and act more like an anchor once they're filled with water. So having some type of cinch device around your waist can really help you out.
And so for folks who are interested in kind of getting into the recreational activities and sports around our rivers and streams in Summit County, as well as adjacent counties in Colorado's mountains. So how would you get into these sports and approach them in a safe way where you're learning about the proper skills and equipment?
Want that?
It's also always, I think, good to start with a commercial trip. There's a lot of companies in the area that do very well guided, highly skilled trips. Take a couple trips, see if it's something that you're really in for, learn from some of the experts there. There are various classes, I think, through CMC and other colleges in the area.
Fantastic.
The rec centers might offer some of that as well.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, do either of you have any other tips for folks as we move into hopefully summer soon and our runoff season here in Summit County?
I don't. I think we've covered it. I think get out there, enjoy it, but do it safely.
All right. Excellent. Erin?
Sounds good.
All right. And if you would like more information about flood preparedness or swiftwater safety in Summit County, you can download our flood preparedness and swiftwater safety guide at summitcountyco.gov/flood. And we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Bike to Work Day.